Welcome to Inner Peace Arts Unscripted. I'm your host, James Coleman. This is episode 24. Check out the blog, innerpeacearts.wordpress.com. Email me at innerpeacearts@protonmail.com. So many things on the mind to talk about today. But the thing I'm going to choose is spiritual arrogance, or just arrogance in general. It doesn't have to be spiritual. And in particular, the notion that my concerns are more important than your concerns. And I want to talk about that a bit. One, on the personal scale, me as an individual saying that my concerns are more important than yours, and then as a group. So, in wanting to form a community around all these ideas, there's a kind of group arrogance that can arise, where it says, our concerns as a group are more important than your concerns to who's ever not a member of the group. And how do you deal with that? Because I think facing that is going to be something that happens because you're coming from a position where you think you are right, and that can create conflict, right? I mean, it's inherent that it's going to create conflict, because if you think you're right, someone else is wrong, and that may or may not be okay depending upon the circumstances. So, how to respond to this? I think that there's a kind of humility where you start off allowing everybody to do what they want to do. And I know that's scary to many people, but that's the reality. If once you've become awakened, or even if you're not awakened, you're still, in some sense, doing what you want to do. And there's no inherent rule of the universe that says you can't do that. Now, can someone stop you? Can someone make it difficult? Yes, but there's no rule that says you can't, right? Which is very different than a force imposing itself upon you saying you can't, as opposed to inherently saying you can't. So that freedom is part of being. And so I grant that to a person. And in thinking that I am right, it means that I can take my power, my choices, and make it an impression upon a person. And they can choose to accept the impression or not to accept that impression. Because, listen, you walk into a room, you've changed the room. That's it. So this notion of impression, or however you want to call it, is a reality, right? And if I'm coming in and saying that I'm right, then that impression is coming with me, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Now, they can decide they want to agree, they can decide they want to disagree, or whatever, but they can't stop me and my impression of right. And if that comes off as arrogance, well, then that's not me being arrogant. That's just me being me. And just if someone else comes into a room and they have a presence or a appearance or impressions or whatever you want to call it again, that are contrary to what me and my agenda, then I have to reject them, and I have to practice rejecting them. And how I do that is what can incite unnecessary conflict, right? I can be nice about it, and I can draw my boundaries nicely. And there comes a time when, it may get more, I'll just say, more difficult to defend yourself. And at that point, you have to decide what path you want to take. And in a material world, material responses work. And you can take non-violent material responses, but it's still a response. So I'm going to leave it at that. But I just want to touch on this notion of arrogance, and that it's something to be avoided, and that if you think you're right, it's okay. It's going to come out if your belief is strong, and that's okay. And the training for you at that point is really, how are you nice about it without backing down. And some people are better at it than others, but it's important to recognize that that's something that can arise, especially as you become more and more convinced of your correctness. So let's take a specific example. Let's just take the notion of an easy one, like poverty, okay, and how much poverty could be eliminated by changes in the way the culture works, right? And let's just say you're in a position to make a difference, right? And I come up to you and I say, hey, you can make a difference, and you're like, well, I don't care. That's your right to say that you don't care. And I have every right to say that you should, according to, what I'm saying is right. And you don't have to accept it, but that doesn't make me wrong, right? So lack of acceptance of my rightness doesn't make me wrong. That's a very important point to take away from this. But that's an example of how, you deal with the conflict, and how you can come off as non-arrogant in the conflict. So that's what I wanted to share today. I think it's important to recognize that these are the kinds of things you need to, and I need to deal with as you become more and more convinced of your rightness, and it starts to come through. And people may be offended by that, and that's okay. And you may be offended by other people's opinions, and that's okay. Your response needs to be one that, hey, gives them the right to do what they want to do, and also gives me the right to defend myself against whatever powers they wish to impress upon me. So that's what I wanted to share today. Pretty straightforward, but I think important to recognize, especially when, like I said, when you know you're right. And I have to say, for myself, I've done a lot of thinking about a lot of things, and I'm pretty much convinced that I am right, and also recognize that rightness is completely separate from, material gain, right? It's not the same. That's another thing that I've learned about that. So that's it. I hope, again, that this is helpful and helps to keep you focused and on track. And this is James Coleman, Inner Peace Arts Unscripted. Check out the blog, innerpeacearts.wordpress.com. Email me at innerpeacearts@protonmail.com. Spirituality, personal development, and social change are the topics that I like to talk about, and I hope you enjoy, and that it's a positive impact in your life. Take care.